Sorry.
Sorry, the motion to come back to public.
So moved.
John Dolan and Rick DeSilva. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Agenda questions. Please limit your questions at this time to resolutions under new business on the agenda. As a matter of fairness, you're asked to limit your questions to no more than one and your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. If you are here representing a group, please identify yourself, the group, and your position in the group. If you're here as an individual, please give us your name and address. This section of public participation will be limited to 15 minutes. And please, if you would, specify the resolution on the agenda that you're referring to. Okay, thank you. Superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you very much, Chris. Good evening, everyone. Just an update on Park. Once again, we started our end of the year testing at the high school this week in language arts and math. This session of testing, different from the first, is shorter. This time around there are 2 sections in English language arts and 2 sections in math. We should be, or are set and scheduled to complete all testing and all tested grade levels within the next 3 weeks. Principals I know communicated that schedule with everyone. All elementary schools will be testing on the same days, but so far so good. We touched base with our tech staff today, and everything seems to be rolling along. So just an update on Park.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any open issues we need to address? I don't think so. Okay. Personnel?
Sure. You'll notice here that Lynn Lombardo, our guidance secretary, is retiring. We thank her for 9 years of service. For those of you who know Lynn, she's been wonderful. She's characterized as caring and has been helpful to all the guidance counselors in the building, as well as Dominic Liata, her director. So we thank Lynn for that. Also, we're in the middle of hiring. You'll notice on the agenda we have 4 teachers, an LDTC position, Spanish, biochem, and physics. We have candidates who we're really excited about, so that's all I got.
Finance and facilities, do you want to wait to the end? Or
Yes, I'll wait.
Okay. We had a presentation scheduled, but that is not happening right now, so we'll wait for the end for the budget presentation. Okay, President's report. I wanted to mention that students and staff at Joyce Kilmer School joined 25,000 schools nationwide in a fundraiser called Pennies for Patients. Pennies for Patients raises money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and Joyce Kilmer exceeded their original $900 goal by collecting $4,008.55. So that was pretty awesome. So we were very proud of that. That's it. Board committee reports. John?
Finance and Facilities met just prior to the meeting. Ed's going to present the budget in a few minutes, and the other topic that we talked about is we're still investigating the potential of adding some capacity on some bus routes to allow for some students to get on in stops that may be just outside the range, specifically for the Rampo Ridge students. So we had our transportation coordinator in today talking to us about the routes and the potential for that, and we're still in the process of analyzing some of the data that she provided and requesting a little bit more data from her, and we'll be exploring it further at the next meeting. So it's still in committee at this point.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, so I have circulated a negotiating committee report to everybody. That's confidential, but the net of it is we had a 3rd session on April 15th, and was not as productive as we hoped, and the MEA has decided to go ahead and file for mediation. So the next steps will be waiting for a mediator to be assigned, and we will then take the process from there. So that's the update.
Thank you. Any other? Yes.
For policy committee on 15I, we have 5 policies and 2 regulations there for first reading.
Thank you. All right. Any others? Okay, thank you. Any board member remarks? All right, so, let's go to old business, minutes. May I have a motion? John Dolan and Doug D'Angelo. Do a roll.
Mr. Salverini?
Yes.
Mrs. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Denise?
Yes.
Mr. Dolan?
Yes.
And Mrs. Davis?
Yes. New business other, I'd like to take 15A through R, please. And I need a motion, John Dolan, and a second, Doug D'Angelo, thank you. Discussion, I'll let you read it for a minute. You ready?
15A through R, Mr. Salverini?
Yes.
Mrs. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Denise?
Yes.
Mr. Dolan?
Yes.
And Mrs. Davis?
Yes. I'd like to take 16A through Q, please. And may I have a motion? Doug, and a second, Rick? Right. Discussion? I'll let you take a moment.
Yeah. Well,
Julia? Oh, you have to vote on that.
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Got me going.
Oh, you were leaving.
Keeping you honest. Anxious to jump in, huh?
He is.
All right, 16A through Q, Mr.
Yes.
Salverini? Mrs. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
Mr. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Denise?
Yes.
Mr. Dolan?
Yes.
And Mrs. Davis?
Yes. Public questions or comments. This section of public participation will be limited to 15 minutes.
Hi, Melissa Ritter. I want to thank you for looking at the transportation again.
What is your address, please?
115 Catherine Ave.
Thank you.
So my kids would have to cross Route 202 to walk to the middle school at 11 years old. I think that's totally inappropriate. So I just want to thank you and just encourage you to please keep looking at it. Any kids that have to cross 202 or Preston Turnpike, it's very, very dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Pierce, I live on 1 Brook Street. So that would be at the end of the street here, and you'd cross 17, go to the end, and then make a left and go to the end again, and then make a right and go to the end. That's where my daughter would have to walk. There are 2 girls. They're both, well, one's going to Ridge School next year, so I appreciate you guys looking into that. We have no sidewalks on our street, so during the snow time, it would be very dangerous for them to walk down that street. And not to mention, there's a section of the road that's blind where if I'm standing on one end of the street, I can't see, and people on 202 can't see. So, I mean, in this day and age, I know a lot of these, rules about the amount of mileage between the school and everything are pretty old. We live in a different age now where, as a father, there's just no way I would let my daughter walk out of sight into an area where there's cars going back and forth and stuff like that. So I appreciate you looking into it, and please continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no one else, we'll move on to the presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, we looked at personnel stuff, and this is mainly non-personnel day. So we will end at the end of this session, we'll do a quick recap in terms of the personnel changes that are in the preliminary budget as well as those that we are proposing for the final budget in 2 weeks. But for the bulk of this, we wanted to kind of go over, most of the budget, the programs you're offering, you continue to offer them. Over the years, we add, we take away, it tends to be incremental. So what we wanted to do today was to deal with some concerns that we've had for 14-15 that's going into 15-16, and you need to be aware of them in terms of the board's planning, because these will have impact if this continues, future program offerings, things that we can do. So if you look at the budget, the first area that kind of sticks out is the 11,000,105 area, and that's out of district tuitions. To repeat what I've said before, for I don't know how many years now, Lisa Rizzo, Child Study Team, and myself, we will meet minimally 3 times in the course of budget development. So usually before Christmas, we sit down, we go over out-of-district students, we go over in-district students, we go over who may be going out of district. We'll sit down again after we come back, do it again, and then yesterday we did it for a final time in order to have the most up-to-date information. This area is fluid. The number of kids that are out of district today, tomorrow it might be one more, it might be one less, but this is close enough for this discussion. So currently we have 70 students that are placed out of district. Point of reference, last March we had 62, and we did not budget for 8 additional students to come in. Out of the 70 students, 2 of them will be graduating out of the program. 2 of them, the Child Study Team is confident, can return to self-contained classes in Mahwah. However, offsetting that, and this is that moving target, between now and July 1st, it's not a question of will they be. We have 4 placements that were either finalized or in the stages of being finalized. So we're still going to be back at that 70 number when all is said and done. And sitting down with the Child Study Team, again, the easy part is that top part. What's harder is sitting down and reviewing the students who might be out of district. So we sit and we play the odds and say, this one I think has a 50% shot at making it through the year. Other ones, maybe a 75% shot with proper support. So we, at the end of that process, we kind of sit and say, okay, we're going to budget an additional 3 students that we don't know about. And I'll let Lisa comment more, but that's probably not a great number to use, but we're using it for the moment. In addition, I will mention in this area, we pay for 30 full-time Bergen Academy students. And normally the number goes between 28 and 32, so we're still getting final numbers for next year. So when you look at the top area there, we are saying that we would be a lot more comfortable if we could increase the budget for next year, not to $5.244 million, but to more like $4.4 million. I'm sorry, $5.4 million. So I'll throw it over, Lisa. We spent a lot of time talking, so I'll let you talk.
Sure, I can talk. What we, as Ed described, it is a pretty significant process in which students who are out of district and we know are maintaining their placement and are successful in that placement, we can have a clearer picture, although an IEP meeting might not have taken place, as to the fact that they're going to remain in that placement. The difficult piece is making guesstimates as to children who may be turning 3 through the course of the school year coming up, who become our obligation at the age of 3, and then students who may be moving into district that we are unaware of, and or students who are currently in district who we are attempting to maintain the placement, maybe seeing some signs of, we've given as much support within the district as we can, and now we need to recognize that there is probably a different program out there that can suit their needs. Within the last 5 months, I've probably received 10 phone calls from various people who are contemplating a move to Mahwah, who have preconditioned that discussion by saying, my student attends a private school for the disabled somewhere, I'm thinking of purchasing a home in Mahwah, what will the township do relative to that placement? So there are very specifics relative to code that we are obliged to acknowledge once a student moves into Mahwah with an IEP that speaks to an out-of-district placement. And that is, in essence, honor that placement immediately and then make a determination if assessments need to be made in order to change that. So when Ed is speaking to you about, we're asking for 3 additional students, Ed knows, Dennis, and obviously Lauren know that I sat at the table today, and I have for the last few months, saying I'm really nervous. And every time we talk about money, I always say, I need that, so I'm the one who's always raising their hand first and saying wherever I can, I just prefer that cushion of money. The bulk of our out-of-district placements range in obviously specific categories. Students with autism, students who are multiply disabled, so they have one or more category of need. And then there's few who are emotionally disturbed, and that seems to be the category right now that, although we have programs therapeutically in place in district grades 6 through 12, seems to be the population that's emerging the greatest. Even at the age of 5, students who have psychiatric disorders that are just impinging upon their own education. We currently have 4 students in Mahwah who have one-on-one nursing services that they receive throughout the course of the day. 1 student in district has a nurse that is with him all day long, and 3 students who are in out-of-district placement. So on top of the tuition is the financial obligation of the district to provide nursing services throughout the school day, and then 1 student who only needs that nursing service going to and from his out-of-district placement. So when I look at the 70 who are currently out of district, of the 70, 11 of them in one way, shape, or form throughout the course of my tenure as director have moved into Mahwah with an out-of-district IEP. So IEPs were written by other townships, they moved into Mahwah needing an out-of-district placement, and we have honored that placement. It's not as if our team initiated them. So that is the way, placements can occur and how we can incur costs. Particularly for the child study team, movement during the summer, as with all of our buildings, occurs, and we seem to see a larger influx of special needs students coming to Mahwah and requesting services that way. So while we have a number there, it's probably the first time in my 12 years as director that I'm walking out of budget saying, I feel a little nervous, like it's still not enough money for me. But, obviously, we have programs in district that are fine. People move into Mahwah for our in-district services, but there is always that unknown entity as to someone that will need an out-of-district placement. So.
Yeah, and as we're talking about this, for people who don't normally attend these meetings, this is an area that we take very seriously in terms of providing the service that we have to provide. And at the same time, I think the board, as well as the public, needs to be aware that it's not a cheap service. And there is no, there's no waiver for out-of-district expenses, for special ed tuitions or anything like that. So again, as we've talked about a lot of things at the board level over several years, so that nobody's surprised when all of a sudden something happens. And like we said, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure there's adequate funds here. This is the first year in I don't know how many years where that 4.473 is a number that's in the red. We have to move money into the special ed area. We've not had to do that. We usually have, out of 4 million, we'd have 100,000 left one year. You might have 150 one year. You might have 50. But again, I think it's a question too of trying to stay within that 2% cap means that, you're looking at this saying, if 6 kids move in, we're just have to figure out where to find money to pay for the other 3, and that's when we'll do that.
Lisa, excuse me, can you just speak to the range of out-of-district placement costs? Because I think it's important for the board to know that it's not always the same, and just from your,
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, the range of out-of-district placements is a continuum of public school placements in which we may turn to a neighboring district and say, look, you have a program, we'd like to send a student to your program, to private schools for the disabled, which are acknowledged by the Department of Ed, to private schools for the disabled, which are not acknowledged by the Department of Ed. So there's that full continuum there. We have a relationship with Franklin Lakes, Ramsey, in which we made a commitment through the CAPS program, Children with Autism in Public Schools, where we would not compete with each other in developing programs, but somebody would be the host school for that preschool autism program, Franklin Lakes, Ramsey, and all other townships within Region 1 would say, you know what, when in need, we're going to access you. Rather than Mahwah create its own entity and try to find ways to fill it if need be, we're going to Franklin Lakes, we're going to Ramsey. So there's cost sharing among those districts. I'm not saying to you that it's the equivalent of a day-to-day, $18,000 public school education. Public school placements, quality placements, can be equivalently as expensive as private schools can. Ramsey, I'll throw it like $70,000, $80,000 for Ramsey Franklin Lakes ABA autism programs. Private schools for the disabled can be as inexpensive as $45,000, $46,000 a school year, not inclusive of an extended school year, to as expensive as, I think Alpine's at maybe like 110, 108, 110,000 a year.
fair ones up above 100.
Yeah, for children with autism. So that range exists in placement. Let's be clear that IDEA, the law that guides my team, prohibits decision-making based on finances. We cannot, we will not, I will not allow us to sit at a table and say that a placement decision is made based on finances. Do I obviously carry that pressure and that knowledge? Absolutely. But the law does not allow for that. The law compels us to determine an appropriate program or placement based on the needs that are presented by the student. So that is the range in which placements can cost for us.
thank you. I just thought it was important to know that it isn't a one-shot deal, and in addition to that, are the services provided, like the nurse example that you
Yes, a
gave,
nursing
that's above and
service-
beyond
Yes,
the
nursing
placement cost.
services in addition,
Right.
so we have the students who have a nurse have a tuition of, let's say, $80,000.
Right,
They have transportation of, let's say, 25, because some of them ride in wheelchairs that really only fit one wheelchair per bus. And then the nursing services can be about $60,000 a school year, $65,000, $70,000 a school year. So that's the range in which a tuition, a single student can cost in terms of
to
tuition.
that you could add speech and occupational therapy and physical therapy and all those other additional components.
That's
So I think
contingent
it's
upon the
important.
program, yes.
Absolutely,
Like
but I think it's
some programs
important
it's
to know.
inclusive,
Right,
some it is in addition to.
but the decisions are made for the best interest of the child, not
They're
because.
made based on the law, which says the least appropriate environment that provides a free and appropriate public education.
Got it, thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
So we heard several numbers, 60,000, 110,000. We
Yeah.
probably have cases like that in district now that we're putting it out. And then you also said 18,000. So is that is that when they're in mainstream? And
I'm throwing a flat number out to you to say what an average general education cost is. When we want to throw a number around, will be 18 as a baseline.
Right.
Ed can be that,
Yeah,
Plus or
close
minus,
enough.
compared to someone going with a classification, could be up to
Correct. Yes.
110, depending on what the
Absolutely.
needs are. And then my other question is, you got Bergen Academy up there, what does that cost per child?
That's about 8,000 a student, 8,500 next year.
Okay.
That's a competitive program. Yeah, and again, I put it, it's locked in just so people are aware that part of this is approximately, 275,000 for Bergen Academies.
Okay, and that rolls all the way up to that top number?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, the bulk of it is special ed, but. Picking up on what was brought up before, this is kind of, these two slides go together because as this slide grows, often this slide is going to grow with it. So these are other services that are provided. The bulk of this is services provided for students in district. Not all of it, So as, I'll let you, we also have the one-on-one paraprofessionals. Those of you who were here 2 weeks ago know that it's reached a point where, yes, we do have some one-to-one pure paraprofessionals, but then we have many who have split assignments, partly one-on-one, partly resource center, or partly self-contained class. So I did not put a number up there. And then we have a lot of contracted services: speech, physical, occupational therapies, ABA therapies, evaluations, transition services, nursing services, which Lisa mentioned. Off the top of my head, we're spending a solid 200 and something thousand on this year.
Over 240, I think it is. Yeah. So the law compels us to look at the need for related services very specifically. And related services are OT, PT, speech, paraprofessionals. And what it basically is saying to us is, what services does a student need in order to access their education? So occupational therapy is needed because the small muscles are so profoundly impacted that handwriting or keyboarding or anything other related to the small muscle group needs to be remediated through an occupational therapist. Physical therapy, for the most part, is navigating the building, being able to walk up and down the hallways, walk up and down stairs, sit in their chairs, any of the large muscle groups. And then speech is, obviously not only articulation, which has to severely impact their ability to communicate their needs, but it's that language piece, the piece of understanding language and vocabulary well enough in order to access their education and the placement that they're in. So what you see there is basically, the review of a student's needs based on evaluations that we've conducted, and then determining what level of service is needed in order for them to be successful in the placement that we've selected, and to acquire the skills in order to move forward on their goals and objectives and their grade level expectations. So that's related services in a nutshell. Independent evaluations is not new to us, but the interpretation of the law was shaky there for about 2 years, and it's just now starting to fine-tune. So in essence, what it means is that my child's study team, in their expertise, conduct evaluations. Parents object with the information that is provided by my child's study team and request independent evaluations. And we can choose to dispute that in court, or we can choose to agree to those evaluations that run anywhere in a range from about $900 to $2,500 per evaluation. So that is a column number that goes up and down each year depending upon the request for those evaluations to do so.
Part of the problem with this area, if you send a child to Bergen County Special Services, Washington South, you sign a contract for $70,000. You monitor the kids going. You know that at the end of the year you're going to spend $70,000. With a lot of these services, it can vary in terms of the child's need as the year goes on. So we may encumber $25,000 for something. You may only need 2 of it. On the other hand, you may need 50. So the point of this is that, unfortunately, while this is what is budgeted this year, we're anticipating in 2014-15 spending more than this amount. So again, we probably for now will let this number ride, but again, it's an area where this doesn't have the same significant impact of the out-of-district tuitions, but I think we're going to be looking at 50,000. We're going to have to keep our eye on that as the year is going on. Okay?
You're not subtracting the amount that we get from the federal government for
No.
for providing these services?
No. If I go back to Mr. Denise's bringing, we receive IDEA, Individual with Disabilities in Education Act, funds. We've received the same amount, give or take $25,000, for just about as long as I've been here. And it's approximately $600,000. So what I was mentioning to the committee was that you really, if you want to know what is Mahwah writing checks for, you have to really add another 600 and something thousand to that number, because we use all those IDEA funds, which are federal funds, to subsidize tuitions. So this is what Mahwah is going to write from the local taxpayers, and then another 600,000 comes from the feds. And during the budget process, the county makes sure that we take that Fed money and apply it. They don't want us to double dip on taking Fed money and local taxpayer money. So they're careful to look
They
at
kind of
that.
subtract it for us.
Yes, it's a, you can do it or you can let them do it. I always like to do it myself. You know, so again, just, you know, as we looked at this and said, you know, what are we going to talk about in terms of the long-term looking at Mahwah, this is something that I think you have to have in the back of your mind as board members, that none of us see this. Ideally, hopefully it'll slow down a little bit, but it's going to be an issue. I'll move to some good news. On the maintenance operations side, we're actually going down, and we've been doing this for a while now. For those of you who show up, we've been replacing boilers and lights at a fairly good clip, so that, we go back there. So that we're lowering the amount for gas and electric by over $300,000 on the budget. And those of you who know me, I don't lower numbers unless I'm comfortable that they're going to still be solid. So barring a phenomenally bad winter, or barring a problem that existed, I can't remember, 12 years ago or something, where natural gas prices all of a sudden shot through the roof, we should be in pretty good shape for both gas and electric bills with that reduction. We also brought down some of the repair lines that we've been pretty good in terms of keeping up with the repair. So, but the bulk of that is coming from the lowering of our gas and electric bills.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I hate to, I know it's not sexy, but, I mean, the money we've been putting into capital reserve and then fixing stuff, to see it pay off with that kind of year-over-year decline is, well, it's real money, so it's great.
Yeah, and over time, again, I hope we can continue to do this. We have a whole plan in place for the LED lights. We have one more boiler to do, and so it's a constant process. And of course, windows are always an issue in older buildings like we have. Transportation, again, we're looking at the big things that are in the budget. Going up, we have 5.8 staff. This covers all of our extracurricular, our athletic trips. In terms of moving our own K through 12 students, we have some of it we do ourselves with our existing staff. Most of it is contracted out to private carriers, both for general and for special education. And at the risk of beating this, you know, as the out-of-district tuitions go up, I have to say it, the transportation costs go up, because if you're sending 8 more kids out of district, the odds are you're going to be picking up another 150, 200, 300,000 in transportation costs. Also have, was asked before about the academies. We pay for the transportation to the academies, to VOTEC programs. By state law, we paid aid in lieu of transportation for parents who send their child to a private or Catholic school who live in excess of our guidelines. So they receive about $884 to cover transportation expenses. And then, of course, gasoline and bus supplies. After salaries, second biggest area in the budget, employee benefits. I really should start with the major med, prescription dental, and then the workers' comp, tuition reimbursement. A few other odds and ends, but that's really the major part. Just a reminder to the board that the dental plan, that's about $350,000. We do not have a rate increase yet for that. We had a 2-year flat rate for dental insurance for the last 2 years, so I'm not sure where that's going. Prescription, we have a separate prescription program. We are still negotiating that price, and that makes up about 25% of the med expenses. So it's not the major killer part, but we're expecting it to go up by in the neighborhood of 10% at a minimum. There's still talk of 15%, so I'm not quite sure where this is going to go. The prescription program will increase in July, so it's a full year of that. The major med, we're in the New Jersey School Employees Health Benefit Plan. That will increase in January. So, you know, again, doing the math very quickly, this area is going up by about 10% budget to budget. So those are the big areas besides salaries that, you know, we have, and you've got the backup documentation on that. I did want to make sure, I know we've done this, you know, every presentation, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of what is currently in the budget. So right now, in the preliminary budget that was sent to the county, approved back on the first meeting in April, I guess, we had budget reduction at Betsy Ross, 1 kindergarten section. We have approximately 45 students right now in Betsy Ross for kindergarten for next year. Lenape Meadows, 1 of the pre-K sections. This is due to decreasing numbers. 1 less 2nd grade at Lenape. 1 less 5th grade at Joyce Kilmer. Those of you who were here last year, we lowered a 4th grade class, so this is the 4th grade is now becoming 5th grade. And at Ramapo Ridge, 2 7th grade sections. Last year we reduced to 6th grade. This is now the class moving forward through the school. So this is what currently exists in the preliminary budget. Good? I mentioned at the last meeting, and after much time and looking at things, at the final budget in 2 weeks when we put it together, we are recommending that we can cut 1 special ed position at Lenape and 2 at the Ridge. There will be a little bit of an offset, and I mentioned this at a few of the meetings, that the high school made a very clear case that they needed 1 additional special ed teacher to meet the programmatic requirements. Want to comment on anything?
No,
So,
yeah, I mean, obviously we met with Mr. Miller relative to the middle school, and Pat Reinhardt, the supervisor of special education. We took the projections of the incoming 5th into 6th and the remaining students within the building. We've looked at the master and built it more than once already, and Ramapo Ridge remains content that they can cut those 2 positions. And Lenape Meadows, we sat with their numbers, and we're really toying around with the possible 2 cut there, and decided with Mr. Fair's guidance that we would go with 1 for next school year and see how that goes.
and a reminder, and Lisa, I know you've been
Yes.
here for this, but just to remind again the board members who don't deal with this every day. You know, the bulk of these teachers that we have in the special ed area are not, if in your mind you've got a self-contained class that has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 classified students, we have very few of those. So.
Correct. When we're speaking about special ed for the most part in district at this point, was a significant shift away from the seclusionary programs of self-contained and pull-out resource room, and more towards an in-class resource room and in-class support model in which there are 2 teachers, some of which are here this evening, a general education teacher and a special education teacher, who work collaboratively in the classroom, servicing 10 special education students and then maybe 14, 15 general education students simultaneously. We still do have self-contained programs throughout the district, but we've reduced the number of those classes compared to what it used to be in the past to basically, in essence, K through 3, 1 per grade level, 4, 5 being a combined cohort, 6 through 8 being either 1 cohort or 1 and 2 cohort, and then the 9 through 12 being a cohort as well, which was not always the case. And in the pull-out resource room model, adhering to what the DOE spoke to Mahwah about, which was more opportunities for students in the mainstream, we decreased the number of pull-out opportunities and use that staff to go into the general ed setting with our students. So that's pretty much the model.
So again, in terms of, you know, we're not just kind of closing a class down on this. I just want to make sure that was clear to everybody. You know, it's a question of consolidating based on the numbers so that you have, we still can provide the services.
Absolutely, yeah.
And last but not least for me to talk about, in 2 weeks is the official budget hearing. The ad will be in the paper on Friday. And we will review everything from soup to nuts at that meeting. Of course, you can let me know if there's anything in particular you would like discussed.
Thank you, Ed. We did.
Okay, thank you very much. I just need a motion to adjourn. Doug and John Dolan. All in favor? Aye. Very good, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.